future, we see the need to manufacture more, closer to home, maintaining safe physical distancing, all while ensuring the highest quality through consistent measurement. Quality departments are often the last in line to benefit from automation. To help with this, we have partnered with whom I believe to be the absolute best in the market, Scale Robotics. We will learn more about the innovative Q-Span Workstation in just a minute from Stefan, Brett, and Heidi. But first, a little bit about Axis New Jersey. Axis New Jersey is part of a group of companies under the PowerFlow Technologies umbrella. Together, we are 14 companies strong. These companies provide supplies, services, and solutions. We support hospitals, universities, transit, airport, water and wastewater facilities, buildings, commercial and residential, industrial, OEM, and manufacturing. Axis New Jersey is a high-tech distributor. We specialize in automation, drives, motion control, machine vision, machine safety, and robots. Axis has been covering the Metro New York and New Jersey area for over 30 years. Our staff of engineers and specialists are available to assist you with projects of any scale. Our headquarters is in Somerville, New Jersey, and branch office in Long Island. Our factory trained and certified engineers can provide the full range of value-added services to commission your system, train your staff, and minimize downtime to achieve the lowest total cost of ownership throughout the entire automation lifecycle. So let us find out how a Q-Span Workstation and collaborative robots can help your QC department automate manual inspection tasks. And now I'm going to turn this over to Stefan.
Thanks, Joe. Alrighty. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Beautiful. All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining the webinar today, and special thanks to Joe and the team at Axis New Jersey for arranging this and hosting NewScale today. So my name's Stefan Friedrich from Scale Robotics. I'm also joined by Brett Adams, who is our primary application engineer for NewScale, and Heidi Quinlivan, our VP of Sales and Marketing. You can find our full contact information there. Feel free to reach out to Axis as well after the webinar, or you can take a look at the recording for our full contact info. You should also be able to see a live demo of Q-Span operating on Brett's webcam. We will be showing this more prominently towards the end of the presentation during our Q&A. And if you have any questions throughout, again, please add them to the chat function and we will address them at the end. So today we'll review typical applications for collaborative robots and how NewScale Robotics is opening up the use of cobots in metrology labs and in-process quality control tasks to help QC labs take advantage of the latest technology in collaborative industrial automation. Provide an overview of Q-Span as well as an application example, and we will also touch on implementation. So a little bit about us. NewScale Robotics, we design and manufacture precision smart grippers and end-of-arm tooling for collaborative robots. NewScale Robotics is a division of NewScale Technologies, and we've been in business since 2002, so we have over 15 years of experience and numerous patents in micromotor and motion control systems development. Our products always feature extreme miniaturization, ease of use, and plug-and-play simplicity. So we were paying really close attention to the industrial automation industry, and we identified a need for a precise end-of-arm tool that could perform both, part handling tasks as well as part measurement. So in 2018, we launched NewScale Robotics and our gripper caliper, which leveraged our aforementioned micromotion expertise. So you may be familiar with or have implemented collaborative robots from UR in 4 primary application types. typically the lowest hanging fruit for automation is, any repetitive or boring task. These types of tasks might include something like loading and unloading parts from a CNC machine, palletizing or boxing product for shipment, bin picking, or even some simple assembly tasks. Dull, dirty, and dangerous, also known as the 3Ds, are typically used to describe optimal robotics applications. So there's really many different solutions and end-of-arm tools that are available for the first 3 applications on my list here, but there really aren't any easy-to-use tools for inspection with cobots. And while our gripping technology can be used for any of these 3, machine tending, palletizing, or assembly, we're really the best fit for automating inspection. So on the right side of the screen, you can see this gripper caliper, as well as our multi-tool mount. And this is really the core technology that we use for handling and inspecting small parts. So it operates directly with the Universal Robots API, and this is through our NSR devices URCAP software. And this really allows seamless integration with their robot through the same program command screen through their teach pendant. So in 2019, we decided to go a step further with our technology, and we launched Q-Span, which is a complete inspection workstation for QC labs. So in our collaboration with Universal Robots, we qualified as a UR Plus partner that's developed an application kit for QC inspection. Application kits on the UR platform, they're really designed to solve specific application problems. We're the only partner within the inspection category. There's also kits designed for welding and sanding and a variety of other tasks. The ultimate goal with these application kits is to get you up and running faster with a solution and to achieve a faster ROI. So our goal with Q-Span is to help users streamline their implementation of cobots specific to QC inspection processes, really to free up your skilled operators to do more productive tasks, such as intricate and complicated inspections that kind of require a more subjective view, or programming something like a CMM or other higher end inspection equipment. So since our gripper also functions as precision calipers, they can be used to perform these contact measurements on parts, giving you the capability to not just pick and place, but to pick, measure, record the data, and place the parts into the designated output location. We can also make in-process decisions based on these measurements to sort your parts into pass-fail trays, or we can sort them based on size. So I'm going to let this video play in the background, and I will just kind of talk over it. There's no audio required. So as we all know, manufacturers need to automate now more than ever to reduce overhead and stay competitive in the global economy. I think it can also help with the current crisis, and we'll touch on that a bit later. Cobots are a really great solution for small and medium-sized enterprises because they lower the cost of entry to automation when compared to more traditional industrial robots, and they offer a lot more flexibility for high-mix, small-batch manufacturers. Cobots also have the added benefit of safety features embedded, allowing them to operate in close proximity to people in most cases after a safety assessment's done. So from our market research, we found that many manufacturers tend to lump QC into overhead costs and that it's not often considered a starting point for automation, even though the QC lab's full of expensive, labor-intensive, manual, boring, and these repetitive tasks that are really great candidates for automation. Kind of like what we're showing on screen here, an operator sitting in a bench all day measuring parts with calipers. So I want you all to, think about how much you're paying your inspectors or CMM programmers compared to the other staff that you have on site. I would bet that it's probably higher than, on average, than most of your other production staff. And you obviously don't want them to do these repetitive tasks when they can be doing something more valuable for you. So we developed Q-Span in response to this problem as a complete QC solution to help manufacturers automate these manual measurements they're making. Now, manual inspection tools are definitely great for checking dimensions in reference to a drawing quickly, but using a tool for hours on end is, prone to error and possibly repetitive stress injuries. So our goal was to enable this automation at roughly the same speed as a human operator and take up roughly the same amount of space that an operator would need at a workstation, while also eliminating data collection errors that you might see from pen and paper. The gripper's repeatability is plus or minus 5 microns, and this is a 6 sigma value. This is typically about 2 times better than most digital calipers. But using robots adds other improvements over manual measurements because we're removing the variation that you see from multiple human operators measuring your parts. Every operator measures the part somewhat differently with manual tools, and that's why you use multiple operators during a gauge R&R study. They may apply different levels of force with their hand while they're pushing the part down, the tool down on the part, excuse me. They might grip the part at a different location with the tool than another operator, or they may approach the part at a different angle. And there's also the chance that they may incorrectly record the data due to a rounding error or bad handwriting if they're writing it down. So we're seeing this shift in production inspection with a strong trend towards collecting more of this data digitally. However, in a recent study that I read in an article through Quality Magazine, Infinity QS spoke to 260 different manufacturers about their data collection. They found that 75% are still collecting data manually, and 47% of those surveyed still rely on pencil and paper, which I thought was pretty unbelievable considering the amount of buzz that we hear at trade shows and social media and in organizations about Industry 4.0. So it's kind of a low-tech solution to what should be a high-tech solution. So traditionally, when you are inspecting and collecting this data, you have 2 primary options. One is parts are measured with manual tools by an operator or the inspector. This might be done right at the machine or in a lab. Data can be recorded manually or through a direct connection to your SPC software. Some manual tools have that capability. Or the parts are brought into your metrology lab and they're very carefully measured on very high precision equipment such as a CMM or an optical comparator. So our system allows you to both measure and perform these normal gripper material handling tasks. And this can often free up 2 employees, and that really maximizes the ROI on your system. If you don't have to move the parts from one location to the other, you're not only saving the transit time, but you're also preventing 2 employees from having to handle that same part and perform 2 different functions that can actually be done by one tool. So, what type of measurements can our system make? So, I'm talking about manual tools. A caliper is really the best analogous tool to Q-Span. And as we work together to identify the types of measurements that we can help you guys automate, we can keep in mind we can really measure any point-to-point dimension, such as an ID, an OD, or length, width, and height. And the system can alert operators as well when parts are reaching their control limits. And this information can be valuable upstream in the process to help you identify any problems or adjust offsets to account for tool wear, or even identify when tooling needs to be replaced.
Stefan, it's Joe here. Can I ask you 2 questions, please?
Sure. Yeah.
What industry trends are you seeing with new inspection instruments? And the second question would be, where would a system like Q-Span benefit over traditional inspection equipment like a CMM or vision system?
Sure. I'll tackle the first one, your first question first. So we're seeing metrology companies develop a lot of new shop floor inspection equipment like CMMs that are designed specifically to be used next to operators on the floor rather than in labs. These tools still require you to manually load the parts into the system. There's also some new vision systems available, that can be done as kind of more of a hands-off approach. Some do require you to manually load parts as well. There are, though, inherent problems, or not so much problems, but challenges with implementing vision, which could impact your inspection capabilities, like lighting, reflections from the part, or sometimes visual obstructions if you have burrs or oils and coolants on the parts. There's certainly benefits of using vision systems or traditional industrial robots for inspection. Which typically involve 3D imaging or very high speeds or very high volume. Kind of to address your second question of where we'd show more benefit over those systems. There's no really one solution fits all. So there's many inspection applications where another system is complementary or it's just more appropriate. So for example, we can't measure things like threads or surface finish or more complex dimensions like roundness or concentricity on a part. And those types of dimensions are probably much better suited for a vision system or a CMM. Where we really excel is in doing inside diameters or receded features that can't be seen by a vision system. That's definitely an instance where you'd use our system instead of vision. Contact measurements with Q-Span also generally tend to be more precise than most vision systems. And the use and implementation of Q-Span is a lot more straightforward than a lot of these other systems to use. And that's really due to the software that we developed and the plug-in for the UR robot.
Great, thank you.
So I'll talk over this video as well. So, what's included with Q-Span? So it's a UR3E robot, which is sold separately through Axis. We have 3 grippers, which you can see here, each with unique metrology fingertips. Gauge blocks and ring gauges are also included, and these act as the NIST traceable artifacts in the system. I'll have more on that in the next slide. Gauge R&R with Q-Span's optimized because we include the dead nest, which is the post that you see in the center of the workstation here. And this allows us really to take every measurement in the same orientation to gravity and reference a known datum, which enables us to grip the part at the same location every time. We also grip the part with the same amount of force every time, and this can be, helpful if you have a, sort of a more malleable part that's prone to, dimpling. Data is automatically logged to a separate PC, and using the software that we provide, this can be exported through CSV or Excel to whatever your preferred SPC software is. Our UR-CAP software operates through that teach pendant that was just on screen, and this really offers seamless integration with the robot and allows an operator really of any skill level to teach the system new inspection processes and store each inspection as a unique robot program. With our kit, we also provide an example inspection program, and using the example parts and sample trays that we provide, this allows you to set up an initial inspection program yourself, using the program that we had given you, and you can kind of reference that as a skeleton framework for when you're doing your own inspection programs. Pose repeatability of the UR robot tends to range from 30 to 50 microns, and this generally is much more repeatable than a human operator, and also helps us ensure with our system that we're gripping the part at the same location every time. And as I mentioned, we're centering the part on this dead nest here, and then we lift the part off of the work surface, neutral to gravity, and that helps us eliminate any repeatability errors that you might see from the robot itself. So a little about, how do we keep the system calibrated? This is a piece of inspection equipment, so that's, definitely something that needs to be addressed. So, all measurement machines need verification. Calibration spheres might be used on a CMM or optical reticles on a vision system. And our gripper calipers are first calibrated at our facility before shipment through a series of very intensive tests. But a zero reference fixture needs to be used as well prior to making your measurements. And we usually use a NIST traceable artifact like a gauge block or a ring gauge. But depending on your part and process, you may also want to use a golden unit, which has precisely known dimensions that you may know in advance from being measured on something like a CMM. So when you redeploy Q-Span or inspect new part types, you might install a new set of fingertips. We see here there's some flat fingertips as well as ruby ball probe tips. When you do this, you need to tell the gripper what the due distance is between its fingertips, especially if you're switching from an inside measurement for like an ID to an outside measurement from an OD. So we have a function built into our URCAP software that allows you to set this reference or zero offset between the fingertips. So on screen here, we have a picture that shows us setting a zero reference with ruby ball styli fingertips. And this gripper is set up to measure an ID of a cylindrical part. So we're gripping a ring gauge from its ID to set the reference. How often you set the reference or recertify the artifacts that you're using in your system is up to you and your processes, and it kind of needs to be made by your quality department. So setting a reference properly is also important because it helps us improve our system's accuracy. So this chart does a really good job of displaying that. And it shows us the difference between comparative and full-scale accuracy. So, what do we mean by those terms? So full-scale accuracy is the variation of part measurement when compared to a standard artifact at any point in the instrument's range of measurement. And then comparative accuracy, on the other hand, is the variation of part measurement when compared to a standard artifact where the artifact's dimensions are substantially the same as the part being measured. So continuing with our example from the last slide with the ruby tips to measure the ID, if the part being measured had a nominal dimension of 10 millimeters, we would set our reference using a ring gauge of the same size, 10 millimeters, to achieve the improved comparative accuracy. So using this method of comparative accuracy, any tolerances greater than plus or minus 1 thou, or about plus or minus 25 microns, is a really good fit for Q-Span and tends to be a recommended solution. So it's important to note, these charts are an estimate of a customer's expected gauge R&R, gauge repeatability and reproducibility based on the testing that we've done in-house. This needs to be verified for your part, as every process and part feature is somewhat unique, and we can help with this somewhat through a part assessment that we'll describe later. This chart here uses Q-Span's comparative accuracy and compares it to some typical manufacturing processes that I'm sure a lot of you are pretty intimately familiar with. So NuScale often supports component level suppliers. We're working on the small scale of things in industries like the medical industry, industrial. We work with some aerospace and automotive suppliers, and we even do a lot of work with manufacturers of glass components, especially optics. We're based out of Rochester, New York, as I mentioned, and that's a really big hub for optics manufacturing. So that's definitely an area of interest for us. Some machining processes, as you can see, are a little bit beyond our capabilities and may be better suited for a higher precision CMM or other inspection equipment. These other processes here, molded, stamped, etched, cast, extruded, or 3D printed, are commonly within our Q-Span systems capabilities. Kind of going back to machining though, we have supported applications in optics manufacturing where high tolerance glass lenses needed to be measured by our customer OptiPro. And there were a few tolerances that were beyond our capabilities, but there were also other features that they needed to measure on the part. So there's a case study video on our website if anyone's interested. And in this application, we measured and performed a pre-check on their part before we loaded it into a CMM for them. So it's kind of another way that we can add value in an inspection application. Machine tending a CMM is definitely an area of growing interest, and you can gain value by, not only are you supplementing the repetitive labor of, having an operator just stand there loading parts in and out, but you can also pre-identify bad parts before they're loaded into the CMM by checking a few critical dimensions. And that can really save you several minutes of inspection time on your CMM. As you know, those processes can last a long time. And they're typically a bottleneck in a lot of metrology labs. So on screen here, you'll see a checklist. Q-Span can handle parts that are about 1/4 pound and 4 inches in maximum size. If you're interested in having our team assess your parts, please send us some info about them. We'd be happy to work with you. Information we would need would include the mass, the size, cycle time, and a part drawing with tolerances highlighted, as well as some information about your current inspection process for each of the identified dimensions. So just a general good rule of thumb in terms of cycle time is, we can inspect about 500 to 1,000 parts per day with Q-Span. This is really highly dependent on how many measurements we need to take, how long you're operating it throughout the day, and the complexity of the geometries, and if the parts need to be, reoriented for additional measurements. So for example, if we had a part that had 3 measurements on one side, and then we had to make a 180-degree flip on the part to take 2 more measurements on the other side of the part. That's a much more complex and time-consuming process than just, a simple pick-and-place operation where we're just measuring one dimension, such as like an ID or part length. So we recognize that, there's a lot of shutdowns and changes going on right now due to COVID-19, and I know our hearts go out to everyone that's been impacted by this. I see things kind of slowly moving to us getting back to work. We really believe that our Q-Span system can help your QC departments return to full productivity, and while maintaining all of the recommended protections and distance between workers, keeping less people in the lab at once. So to help manufacturers get a jump start on their automation projects for later in 2020, we're currently offering a free Q-Span correlation study and part assessment for interested customers. So we'll review an example study in the next couple of slides to give you an idea of what's included. And we review this in greater detail in our latest white paper, Q-Span System Correlation Study. And I did include a link in the chat, and the team at Access can also send you a link to that after the event to download a copy. So during each part assessment, our objective is to validate our Q-Span measurements to show correlation with your existing measurement method. To determine if it's capable or an acceptable fit for not only measuring your parts, but doing this automation process. So the first step is to review your part drawing, and this is a really good example on screen of a part manufacturing drawing that would give us useful information for this. So we have the dimensions highlighted, tolerances highlighted of the critical inspection features. And so for simplicity, we highlighted them here as, M1, M2, all the way through M6. So for each part feature, we'll look at, where the gripper can make contact with the part to make a measurement. and kind of determine if we can do that with custom fingers if needed. For these part assessments, we will try to use our metrology fingertips for the most accurate measurements. These assessments are usually free unless the part is so complex that we need to do custom engineering and fabrication of special fingertips or special fixturing to actually do the measurements. But we can definitely take a look at the part drawing as a really good free first step. And like I said, usually the part assessment later on is free unless a lot of special work is needed. We're also happy to complete an NDA if required. I'm sure the same goes for Axis if the part drawing is controlled. So once I review your drawing, I'll pass it along to Brett. Again, he's our application engineer, and he'll also evaluate it with me. And once we determine it's a good fit, we'll ask you for a series of sample parts, usually about a dozen, and hopefully these are serialized for us to take a look at. And so now I'll pass the presentation over to Brett, and he'll walk us through this example part assessment.
Thank you, Stefan. So yeah, really, as my role as an applications engineer within Scale Robotics, this is where I step in and get involved in validating a customer's particular application. On the early side of it, Stefan does a good job at defining all the necessary information about the application so that I can take the parts and use our in-house Q-Span system to develop a program for the validation. So as we're going through the example of the 3D printed part, one of the first things we take a look at is the part tolerance. In this case, it's plus or minus 0.15 millimeters or 150 microns. Our initial indicator shows that even at a full scale accuracy, Q-Span should be a capable instrument for the process. But at a comparative accuracy, we're within that green recommended gauge R&R value of less than 10%, which is considered a capable instrument. A gauge R&R between 10% and 30% may be considered an acceptable instrument for measuring. This can depend on quite a few things. There's potential where a customer could currently not have a gauging method for a part that needs to be inspected, or the system that they're using currently, the best gauge R&R they can get may be in the high 20s or around that 30% range. So often we may be able to step in and improve that gauge R&R, even though it's not within that 10% or less than 10% range. For inspection tools, the capability of the process measurement is evaluated using what's called a type 2 gauge R&R method, and that considers both the variation that occurs from the operator as well as the gauge. Now, using a Q-Span system, we take advantage of the UR3 cobot and use that as what would be considered our single operator. So that puts us into a type 1 gauge R&R evaluation, and that can be easily programmed and utilize the repeatability of the robot to eliminate that variation. Go to the next slide, Stefan. So after we evaluate the drawing, we'll ask for the sample parts. Usually 10 to 12 parts is a good sample size for us to go through the in-house evaluation. We serialize the parts. This is important to make sure that we locate each part the same way. We pick each part up the same way, and that way we can correlate the data once it's collected with a Q-Span system. This example uses our metrology fingertips to take the 6 measurements on the part. It's performed at our dead nest platform, including the width, the OD, the ID, and the height of the part. This screenshot here is representative of our data logging software, which is a fundamental piece of the Q-Span system. This is an example of measurement one through 6 here. The graph shown here is measurement 3 specifically, and you can see that the program will tally a count. It'll also calculate the average of the measurements being collected, the standard deviation, a min value, and a max value. In a production environment, these measurements are easily exported using the export CSV button within this screen, and those are a common formatted data set that can be imported into any SPC software. So after we've collected a series of measurements on the sample parts, we can calculate the gauge R&R for our run of measurements. This is expressed as a P over T percentage of the system for a specific measurement. The P over T percentage is the ratio of the precision of the measurement system. And in this example, P equals the measurement repeatability, and that will be divided by the total part tolerance. The ratio is expressed as a percentage, and a low percentage indicates the variation of the measurement system will have a small impact on precision of the part measurement. Measurement 3 shown here, we're calculating a P over T value as a percentage of 8. So that is below that 10% or acceptable range. And then if you go to the next slide, this shows some more examples of measurements 1 through 6. In this case, measurement 1 and measurement 2, both going through the same calculations. We're achieving gauge R&R values of less than 10% with 3 at measurement 1 and 7 at measurement 2. If you'd like to get some more in-depth details on this particular example, or this part here, you can read more about it in our white paper that was published. This will be linked in the webinar, I believe, afterwards, if you're interested in looking through that.
All right. Thanks, Brett. So, if after this evaluation, we both agree that Q-Span's a good solution for your application, we'll propose a workstation for the application, and we can supply either the Q-Span kit or the Q-Span solution to pick, measure, record, and place your parts. So the real fundamental difference between a kit and the solution is that the kit is a standard product. This is the UR Plus certified version of our system that really takes a more do-it-yourself approach. It includes sample parts and example programs, kind of like I showed in the earlier video, that you can use as a framework for doing your own part inspection. So if you have an in-house automation team that handles these projects, this would be a good solution for you. It's designed specifically for the UR3 ecobots. Now, the solution is a customized and configured solution, and I'll have a little bit more on this on the next slide. And it's really meant to use our value add engineering from NewScale to provide a custom system that's ready to run for your part upon delivery. With the solution, our delivery can also include installation and on-site training by NewScale. And obviously we will have to coordinate on that given the current situation in the world. So Joe, I'll bring this back to you. I think now would be a good time to talk about some ballpark pricing for both Q-Span as our distributor and the UR robots, just to give everyone an idea. And I was hoping you could also kind of talk about industry trends that you've been seeing in robotics related to COVID and kind of what you're seeing in the various facilities you're visiting.
Thank you, Stefan. So the starting price of the Q-Span Workstation kit is $35,000. This price excludes the universal robot. We estimate a total deployment cost of around $85,000 for a system configured to measure 3 different part types. This estimate includes Q-Span, the universal robot, and some custom engineering. This is comparable to the annual cost of 1 full-time employee. Assuming that the Q-Span Workstation operates over 2 shifts a day for 5 days a week and requires staff tending of about 10% of the time, when factoring in loading in parts trays and setting a 0 reference, we estimate an ROI of about less than 10 months. We are happy to have a specific ROI discussion with you and provide sample calculations to anyone interested. Typical delivery is about 4 to 8 weeks for Q-Span. Customization requests may add a few weeks to the lead time of a system solution. Installation takes about a half a day. Training can take a couple of days. Once an inspection program is developed for a part changeover will only take minutes. Again, we're not talking about being faster than people. Q-Span is comparable in speed, but automate the task to improve repeatability, consistency, and measuring. And CDC recommends physical separation now being required by OSHA and state laws. So what we're seeing in the trends in the marketplace right now, and I have a few slides here to kind of go up further onto that after Stefan's done. Based upon these requirements by OSHA and state laws. It's for in-depth cleaning, tool handling, physical distancing, and keeping people separated so as to reduce risks is what we're seeing in the marketplace currently, and it would kind of make sense, at least from my point of view, to put one of these stations inside of there and keep people further apart and less handling. Everybody doesn't want to have wants hands-free kind of touching points here, and then it doesn't have to be cleaned as often, and you could get a higher throughput on that. But I'll go further into that once Stefan is finished here.
All right, thank you. So, each part being measured here is unique and requires some level of customization. So we offer a standard set of metrology fingertips with our Q-Span kit. But as I mentioned in the previous slide, we also have the capability to customize the Q-Span system to match your part features and really optimize the system for your inspection requirements. So this can be done by your team, but we also have the capability to provide this value-add engineering service for your company. So, this is where our application engineers like Brett would really get involved and help customize and tailor the system to your specific part contours and requirements. So we configure the solution in a few main steps, which I have listed on the screen here. So the first step is determine the number of grippers needed. With custom fingertips design, kind of like what you see as the 3D model on the screen, only 1 gripper might be needed. We do usually recommend 3 though, so that you have as much flexibility as possible when you're ultimately using the system for inspection of other part types, especially if you're intending to use it for other parts rather than the first one that you're starting with. The other thing we'll help you with is defining the fingertips required for the application to match the specific features and contours of the parts. So, we'll ask, can we just use the standard metrology fingertip set, which you can see in the top right, that includes some Ruby Styli probe tips, flat and spherical fingertips, or do we need to use some sort of custom fingertip design that we need to help you with? And this could include selecting the fingertip material, which can be important in some applications such as microelectronics, or going back to our example of handing optical lenses, where something like hard plastic like Delrin might be used. Selecting input and output trays or bins to present the parts in a stable orientation with known coordinates is also a necessary consideration. So the size, spacing, and mounting requirements are all things that we think about as we're going through this design. And some customers may use a part feeder, in which case we need to know the location of the input and or output, such as the end of the conveyor. And we typically say that we'll support one handshake between our system and the rest of the automation cell. NuScale typically focuses specifically on the Q-Span system, and other kind of peripheral components around the system is definitely where someone like Axis would be able to provide a lot of value. Configuring the dead nest that's holding the part during measurements and helping us minimize variations due to gravity, grip location, and dynamic motion is one of the other main design considerations, and really optimizing it for the parts that we're loading in and out. And the material of this dead nest may also be important here too, especially if we need to be considerate of not scratching the part. Going back to the optics example, you have to grip the optic from the very outer edge. We can also write a robot program for you that implements our pick, measure, record, and place operation for each part feature. Taking the part from the input location, bringing it to the dead nest, recording those measurements, and logging them to your PC with our data logging software, and then moving them to the output location. And we're very experienced with this, so it's a way that we help customers optimize their programs to exceed their gauge R&R expectations. So at this time, I'd like to open up the discussion for any questions. So please feel free to comment in the chat function, and we can kind of let those cycle through, and we will address them as they appear in order. So Joe, I can stop sharing here and give you back the reins.
Okay.
So I know you have a couple slides that you wanted to conclude with.
Stefan, while I'm doing that, would you be so kind to let me know what UR robot size is recommended?
Yeah, so the Q-Span Workstation kit is really optimized for the UR3. That's what it's designed for. We certainly have the capability to operate on the 5 or 10. In which case we would just help you design a customized workstation that really optimizes the full range of motion of those robot arms. So our multi-tool mount and 3 grippers mounted onto the end of the robot arm, that only weighs 1 kilogram, which is a third of the robot's capacity, the UR3's capacity. So moving up to a UR5 or a UR10. The primary reason to do that would be for reach. So if you have some, kind of larger parts, or you want to fit more parts on your work surface, that would be where one of those robots would be ideal. UR did recently release a 16E, which is 16 kilogram payload. I think for most applications, we probably wouldn't use that because the primary reason to move up to that robot is for payload capacity rather than reach. So,
No, appreciate that. Quick question would be, I have another question here from John. What is the cost of ownership with regard to software licensing?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and Joe, you can comment on the universal robot side of things. From our side of things with Q-Span, when you purchase the Q-Span system, as Joe mentioned, around $35,000 is the starting price. We give you 1 license of the data logging software to be used with your robot, and that includes the UR-Cap software. The UR-Cap software you can actually download online currently from our website. The data logging software, though, we give you 1 license of that to operate with that specific robot you're implementing it for.
Are there any update costs or annual fees with that license?
No, it's included with the initial purchase.
Okay. I had a question here asking, can the data logging be stored to a server?
Yeah, certainly. So we export the data through through our PC-based program, and it can be exported through CSV as the very generic format that we have. We can certainly work with you to figure out what the best formatting type is, and that can be kind of factored into the custom solution that we provide, is kind of assessing how we would do that. We definitely have customers that are manipulating that data in their own way and kind of exporting it directly into their software.
Okay.
And you can, I was going to say, you could also host your our data logging software, locally on a computer that's within your company server, if that's what they meant by the question.
Okay. I don't see any other questions coming in. If anybody wants to drop a quick chat or send us a email if you have any questions after the presentation, please let us know. So guidelines by OSHA, I just wanted to kind of follow up on my comments before. Guidelines by OSHA and the CDC and the current state legal requirements are to maintain physical distancing, limiting interactions, staggering work shifts, limiting the share of tools, implementing frequent sanitization of high human touch items, and traceability of exposure. By implementing a measurement system in here, we are going to keep the QC person away from the CNC operator or the fabrication person at that point, and that will help with the spacing and frequent touch of items. And the robot isn't going to be going out into the public and going into other places, so it'll have less chance of spreading this disease here, virus. And some other rules here: installing a Q-Span solution is an investment that addresses separation, limits human interactions, and can work all shifts. Such measures may help protect workers from infection, help protect organizations from liabilities and losses of business. And these are some things that I cut out right off of the website here, which kind of just makes sense when implementing a collaborative robot and Q-Span solution here.
Joe, if I could just add to that, if you have, when you're implementing a robotic cell, if you kind of have one person designated to, teaching the robot different inspection tasks, you can also just have that one person kind of be your designated employee that kind of interacts with the system, reducing the number of hands, touching that teach pendant. And, Q-Span only requires one operator, and it's just the one robot, right?
Yes. Okay. I was just trying to check if there was any other questions in the meeting chats here. I have not seen anything. So if that's the case here, we are almost at the hour. And at this point, so let us know if anybody has any other questions. We look forward to discussing your applications. Give us a call or an email, and as well, Stefan, Brett, Heidi, we thank you also for your time today and making this presentation happen.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Be safe. Stay well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.